Welcome. I'm really excited that all of you are here today. We've got an incredible session ahead, and I'm confident that it will bring value and inspiration to each one of you. My name is Nina Boyson, and it's such an honor to host you today. It is a joy, and I'm also glad to be co-hosting with Ian. Thank you, Ian. You just want to give a wave
Great to be
to
here with
everyone.
you all. Thanks, Nina.
Great. So, my next button just uh, hung there for a moment. To those who's new to 54 and to these live learning sessions, a special welcome to all of you. And I hope to see more of you around here. So I just want to share a little bit more about 54 before we jump into the rest. So we are 54 and our mission is to guide ministries on their learning journey towards their full potential. And we really love seeing leaders being equipped to grow the health of your organization so that you can apply your best energy to the work of your mission. So, a few practical elements before we start. This meeting will be recorded and it will be available on the website afterwards. And if you can, please stay on mute to not disrupt the session, but we would love to see your faces. So please switch on those cameras if that is possible for you. There will be time for questions right at the end, so please make notes if anything comes to mind. We would really love to hear from you. And before we started the session, Korey just said that she's really curious to engage with all of you and to hear what comes to mind, where you get stuck, what are the questions on your mind when it comes to this topic. So we really are eager to hear from you. So I hope that as anything that you wonder about comes to mind as we share today, that you would just note that down or pop it in the chat and we'll make some time to get to all of those questions. And as you would have seen, if we don't get to them in this session, we'll make a way to find to get the answer to you on the WhatsApp group or via email. And then we'll have some breakout rooms where you'll be discussing some of the questions that we've prepared for you in smaller groups. So we just want to ask if you are not able to join any of the breakout rooms, no worries, we understand. We would love for you to stay on the session though, and you can just let Renette know. So you can find Renette in the chat, send her a direct message, and she will make a plan for you. She'll create your own corner for you so that you can still stay in the session even though you're not able to join for breakout rooms. And then we have an exciting takeaway at the end. So stick with us and we'll have a great time. Great. So our topic today is about amplifying your brand. And just to show that we have 3 courses on the platform that relates to this topic. So those are the foundations of communication and identity, building a strategic identity, and communicating more effectively. So if you love what you've seen today, there's even more on the platform. We really want to encourage you to go and do those courses, and you can then also do it on your own time or with other leaders if you want to. But let's take a moment to talk about why this topic is important. I was really excited to share this with you guys because I feel like it's such an important part of how we think about our communication and our identity. So what you're seeing on the screen here is data from our 9D assessment, where we can see that most leaders say they have a compelling brand, and that is great to hear to start off with. But what we also see is that most leaders struggle with getting healthy levels of exposure and also the tools and knowledge to test the effectiveness of their communication. That I found, or I was sad to see that because it's really important. Why is it important? Well, it is great if we know what we are about and who we are. But if we're not able to communicate that to the outside world, we're also not able to attract and connect with the funders, the volunteers, the other organizations who would love to partner in our mission. And so it really feels like the way that we communicate and the way that we express ourselves is really the front door, or at least the porch, that invites people into our home or into our organization. So, Ian, what are your thoughts when when you see this?
Yeah, that's so good, Nina. I love the link you drawing there from our communication and our identity, our just telling people who we are into our funding. That's a really strong link. And it's really interesting in working with many organizations as they've gone through our 9D assessment, which if you haven't done, I encourage you to do. It's a great way to just view your organization through these 9 dimensions that are on the screen. But the dimension that leaders choose least to work on is communication and identity. And in some respects, yeah, it's actually makes me feel very sad because it's a really important piece. To tell
Mm,
our story well can enhance our impact. It draws people into the mission and the work that we're having. It's a way internally to inspire our people. And one of the things organizations battle with is retaining people. And if they don't understand the importance of the work they're doing, they can really make a difference as we start to communicate that well. So I'm excited for today. This is an important topic that's not given enough airtime in the nonprofit space. I think it's
mm,
undermined. It's seen as a business topic. And actually, it's a really important piece for ministry organizations and nonprofit organizations to be healthy. And ultimately, when it's not healthy, it just takes away the energy from our mission, right? You want to move to the next slide? Thanks, Nina. When we're unhealthy in this space, it takes something away from our mission. Whereas in all those 9 dimensions, we see organizations that thrive um, just are able to really maximize their energy onto the mission and the difference they want to make in the world around them. So
mm,
this is just again for all of you who are joining, well done for taking the time today to be here. Don't underestimate the power of this topic, and I encourage you from today to take time to build this aspect of your organization. Korey's going to take us through some really practical things, and it might feel at times a little bit complex, but actually the courses are there, and there's some exciting things coming to really serve you in this space. So buckle up. We're going to go for a ride and have some great time together. Shall we just go into our slides and engage a little bit before we get in to some time with Korey? And just if you haven't yet come in to just stay on that first one, Nina.
mm.
Uh, just get aligned, jump onto ahaslides.com/54 or grab your phone, open the camera and scan that QR code. And we're going to just have a moment to engage and stay in this because we're going to use this tool through the session. And it's such a great way to engage and get your thoughts and feedback as we go. So the first question is, if you haven't put it in yet, what organization's branding inspires you most? What comes to mind as you think about great organizations? Who comes to mind and branding? And I love Patagonia. Their products are
Yeah,
incredible. Their internal culture seems to also replicate that. You got excited about that too, Nina.
I did. I'm now very sad I didn't choose that one. I don't know why I went for Canva. That was a bit of a swing and a miss. Patagonia is such a great one, and I heard the book about their culture is also really great. It's Let My People Go Surfing. If anyone wants a culture recommendation, take us
Fantastic.
away, Ian.
Great. Shall we move on to the next one?
Let's
So
do
here's a
it.
question for you. As you think about your own organization, do you have a clearly defined understanding of your target audience? How would you place yourself? Not at all in progress, or yeah, we're on track with that. Do you know the audience that you're communicating to, and do you understand them and how to
Mm,
communicate to them? This is a really important piece. If we don't know who we're communicating to, who we're telling our stories to, then it's difficult to actually do that well. And
mm.
this is amazing. I'm loving the fact that most organizations, most of you here are saying in progress, well, yes, we do. That's really fantastic.
That really excites me. Mm,
Well done. And the fact that you're here shows that this is a piece of your organization that you're investing time into. So that's really encouraging.
yeah. What
One
excites
more.
me, Ian,
Okay, Nina.
is that Corey's going to share really practical tools to answer exactly this question. Literally, you guys are going to be walking away with templates to help you define this clearly. So seeing the in progress makes me think, yeah, this is going to be equipping, and that's great.
That's
Sorry,
wonderful.
and just one quick question. Is this with regards to your beneficiaries or to your donors? Because they also,
Excellent
how you,
question.
how you communicate to them is very different, actually.
That is true. That's a very good point. And I think it's
Um,
important to understand whichever target audience we're communicating to. So it's any target audience. When you are communicating, telling your stories, just advancing your brand, the target audience is critical, whichever the target audience is. So thank you for the question. Yes, it's all of them.
I think Korey would be giving you a 10 out of 10 for that comment, Ron, because it is good to note that it's very different, the communication to the different target audiences. So well done.
Great. Should we go to the next one, Nina?
Let's go for it.
One more question for you, and then we're going to hand over to Korey. How would you rate your brand visibility from low to high? And there's 5 options there. How would you rate your brand visibility? And I'm not going to try and expand on that. I think you understand what we mean by that. Brand visibility is so important. Being able to be understood and known is a way for us to advance our impact and our reach, both in the donor world and in the communities we're serving. So what a spread. Look at this.
Mm-hmm. This is quite a fun wave to watch.
Yeah. It's a difficult one to really advance. And I'm also excited because I know that Korey's work today is going to help us with this. How do we strategically grow our brand and the visibility of our brand? So I think we're good to jump back over and hand over to Korey, but just excited for you to spend some time with Korey today. Nina, do you want to take us back to the PowerPoint?
Absolutely. Thank you, Ian. And thank you everyone for engaging. Just want to really encourage you to keep doing that. And it's great to hear from you and to see who we've got in the room and to see that identifying your target audience and getting your brand visibility up is your next step. So thank you for engaging, and a big welcome and thank you especially to Korey. The preparation time with Korey has been so great. I can just say that, guys, she has worked very hard to put together an excellent presentation for you. I told her we need to keep it very practical, and she's done exactly that. She's taken a huge body of knowledge that I know she has and refined it into really practical things that's going to be very helpful, because her heart is so generous, and she just wants to serve and help leaders get unstuck when it comes to your brand and your communication and your identity. So Korey, thanks for doing the hard work and the heavy lifting, and for just bringing us the meal today, not the pots and the pans, just the amazing meal. We're very excited to have this session with you, and we're grateful to have you here. So over to you.
Thank you so much, Nina. Yeah, it's so great to see so many faces here, and I'm so encouraged and just grateful that you're choosing to share 90 minutes of your time with us this morning. I know or maybe the afternoon for some of you, it's morning for me. But I know there is so much that you all could be spending those 90 minutes doing. You're very busy leading your ministries, but I'm just really grateful you're choosing to spend it with us, and hopeful that you'll walk away feeling a little more confident and equipped to lead and amplify your brand. So Nina, if you want to go ahead and put the slides up, we can start walking through that. I'll share just a little bit more about myself so you have some context for who's speaking to you today. I am Korey. I live in Virginia in the United States on the Eastern Coast there. I am married and have 2 children, a 5-year-old boy and a 3-year-old girl, who keep me very busy when I'm not working with my clients. And so I have spent the last about little more than 7 years of my career in the marketing and branding space, and was lucky enough to spend 4 of those working for a nonprofit Christian marketing and branding agency. And we've worked with ministries, both local and global, in all sorts of projects. But you might recognize some of these. I'm not sure. Water Mission is a bigger one we worked with, the International Mission Board, our Daily Bread Ministries, and then also some smaller Christian schools, local church, local pregnancy center. So just a vast range of ministries. But I just say that to encourage you that with all of them, I've gotten to partner with them on some really fun and really impactful marketing strategies. So no matter how big or small your ministry is, or where you are in your journey, if you're on year 1 or 10, there's a place for you to do marketing and branding and to do some amazing things in this space that will really take your ministry to the next level. So I'm really excited to talk more about that today. All right, we can go ahead forward to the next slide. We'll start getting into some content here. And I just want to preview what we'll be talking about today. So we are going to focus on first how to ensure you have a brand worth elevating. And then we'll move into really understanding your market on a deeper level. And then we'll jump into some time for a breakout room and get to discuss in smaller groups, which I think will be really helpful. And then we'll come back and we'll talk about the importance of testing and assessing your communications. And we'll end with some quick tips for choosing the right channels and some best practices in that. So, and then we'll follow up with another breakout room to discuss all of this and have some time at the end, hopefully, for some group discussion and questions. So we have a lot to pack in this morning, but really excited to go ahead and jump in. All right. So let's discuss how to have a brand worth elevating. Before we can get into really tactical marketing strategies, I think it's really important to make sure that you have a brand that you feel confident in elevating and that will really resonate with your audience. So that's what we're going to talk about first. It's really important to form a clear brand strategy, and many of you have probably done this, but I just want to make sure we have some alignment here. One of the most common mistakes that I actually see ministry leaders make is investing in marketing their organization before they've fully aligned on their brand. It can feel really exciting to get a website up and start your social media and start sending out emails and flyers and all of the fun things before we've really had a chance to align on a brand architecture and a brand strategy. And doing those two things first will actually set you up far better before you start communicating who your brand is to your audience. So the first thing is brand architecture. And there's a course, as Nina mentioned, that will go far deeper into how to do this. But just to give you a quick overview, a brand architecture is essentially a map of everything an organization does and how it all fits together. So you can see a very, very high level example of a brand architecture for Toyota there on the screen that just shows what their parent brand is, a sub-brand that they have of Lexus, some what we call signposts of just other categories that they might have that you would see on their website but aren't necessarily other brands, and then some products that they have, which for ministries, it might be services you offer. And it's helpful just to have that exercise of going through everything your organization does and identifying, do I have sub-brands? What are my services? And how does it all fit together? And I think especially for smaller organizations, it's helpful to do this exercise and think about it, what you want to look like in maybe 10 years and how will your organization look then, so that you can start fitting into that brand now and not have to reconfigure things as you grow. And then as you decide on your brand and sub-brands and services, the naming structure comes into mind as well, especially if you have sub-brands, and just deciding if you want to have a house of brands model, a branded house, or a hybrid model. And that really is just about if the name of your ministry was Hope Ministries and you have Hope Kids and Hope Adults, that would be a branded house. It all fits the same naming structure. If you had a house of brands model, you could have Hope Ministry has another ministry called Redemption under it and another ministry called something else, Revival, right? So you can have different names that all fit within your parent brand. So again, I won't go too in depth here today. I more just want to bring this up as if you haven't had these conversations internally, it's really important to do that before you start really marketing your brand and building more assets for your brand so that it can all make sense together. And then the second piece here is brand strategy. And this is made up of your target audience, your promise and benefits, and your personality. So your target audience is who you're serving. And we'll jump a lot more into this today and talking about, there's a good question posed earlier of who is my audience? Oftentimes there are multiple audiences in this, but knowing, really understanding those people at a deeper level is going to be really helpful. And then also what your unique value proposition is and the benefits that you are able to offer to your audience, and really having a clear understanding of that. That's going to have a huge effect in the words that you choose to say, when you're marketing your organization and how you're going to communicate to your audience. So that's really important. And then that final piece of personality is a fun thing to identify, and that also is going to just play out into your messaging, your visuals, everything you do should reflect the personality of your brand. What makes you, you? What makes your organization unique? Do you come across as perhaps a wise, trusted elder? Do you have a sense of humor? Are you like a friend to your audience, a trusted professional? All of this is just good to think about how you want to come across. So let's go ahead and jump into the next slide, and we'll talk about how your brand strategy affects your communications. So let's start with messaging. And it's really important to align your messaging to your brand strategy. Messaging is the words that you use to talk about your ministry. So this is everything from the name of your organization to your tagline, your voice and tone that you have, the About Us copy, that the About Us paragraph that's usually found on your website or in your social media bio, or even in your print communication when you're explaining what your organization is. And then the calls to action that you use to encourage your audience to engage with your ministry. Do you say donate now, or do you say, would you please join us in this mission? All of that is your messaging and affected by your brand strategy. So if we go to the next slide, I have just a brief example that we can see how this plays out in real life. So this is the about copy from the websites of two different nonprofits. And both of these nonprofits are focused on solving the water crisis. I'm going to read them aloud, and then we can talk about, I want you to pay attention as I read them to the personality that you hear each one conveying just by the words they're choosing to use here, okay? All right, let me read example one, and you'll just listen for a moment and see what words come to mind. Together, we can end the water crisis. Since being founded in 2006, we've been chasing one ambitious goal: ending the global water crisis. And while the water crisis is huge, we're optimistic. We know how to solve the problem, and we make progress every day thanks to the help of local partners and generous supporters. If we work together, we believe everyone will have access to life's most basic need within our lifetime. And I'd like to pause, and actually, if you all don't mind using the chat function, I would love for you to put in some words that come to mind that would describe the personality and just what you feel coming across in the tone of that example. What adjectives would you use to describe the tone of that paragraph? This is so good, y'all. Thank you. I love seeing this, all of these. We have optimistic, collaborative, confident. Someone said we, heroic. That's a great word. Passionate, confident, mission-minded, visionary, inclusive, community. This is so good. Yes. Action-oriented, achievable. This is great. Thank you so much for sharing. Yes, I heard a lot of the same of what you were saying. Inspirational, confident, optimistic. Absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and read the second example now, and then we'll do the same exercise. So be listening. All right. Example 2. We are a team of builders. As engineers, marketers, implementers, fundraisers, volunteers, and donors, each of us is building an important piece of a solution that lasts. Each engineering plan, pipe fitting, and installation is a piece of a solution that God is using to place communities around the world back to where He intended them to be. We believe we are following His blueprint. God never intended for some to have safe water and others to suffer, so each of our actions, in partnership with yours, adds up to lives saved. So go ahead and take a minute and post in the chat some words that describe this example. Team, wordy, vague, practical, faithful, bigger picture, collaborative, technical, self-oriented, structured, It's always so interesting to see how it comes across to different people too. There's so much in individual perspective here as well. Professionals, that's great. Yes. So when I read that, I agree. It comes across a lot more technical. I heard a lot of language around pipes and engineering and installations. I also heard some more Christ-focused language. Example 2 was from a Christ-focused ministry, whereas example 1 was a secular nonprofit. I hear some more community-focused language, informative. Someone just said, I agree. I think it's uplifting, community-focused, we're a team. So both of these examples just go to show you that they're trying to say the same thing here. They're both trying to solve the water crisis and invite people to be a part of it. But the audience that each would draw would probably be slightly different. And the way that they're communicating what they do is just coming across a little bit different. And that's just based on their brand strategy. All right. So we can move on now. That's just an example of messaging. Let's get into talking about visuals. This is another piece that should align to your brand strategy. And visuals is anything that you see related to your organization. So it's going to be your logos, your colors, your fonts, the boldness and structure of the lines and shapes that you use, symbols that go along with your organization, icons, photography styles included in this. So your brand strategy will really influence the visuals that you use to communicate your brand. And on the screen here are some brands that you might recognize. And now we're gonna play around in the chat again here, just to get you thinking. I would love to know what you notice about these logos that you think communicates something about their brand. And I'll start by giving an example here. So Instagram is the logo at the top left. It's that square. It's bright, it's multicolored. It's showing that it's fun and expressive. It shows the outline of a camera, which indicates that it has something to do with photos, but instead of making just a square, rigid camera, they've made it with curved lines, showing it's not rigid, it's more playful, and it feels a bit more inviting. So those are just a few things that I noticed about that logo. I would love for any that you might recognize here, just drop in the chat something that you feel like comes across in one of these that might communicate something about its brand. I'm seeing some notes about colors, primary colors, solid colors are vibrant. Amazon A to Z, somebody noticed that. Very good. Yes, the arrow in Amazon points from the A to Z, saying we have it all from A to Z. We offer everything. Lego, someone said it looks a bit with mirroring construction and engineering. I think that's really insightful. The Nike swish indicates motion and swiftness. You all are good. You are on it today. Very good. Nike is energetic. Absolutely. The CVS Health. Yes, the heart looks like a heartbeat. Absolutely. That is a pharmacy and health organization. And yes, definitely showing caring. And the red color there is also symbolic of health. Yes, this is so good. The Coca-Cola one, I'll point out at the bottom that the curved lines is supposed to indicate some timelessness. It's a classic brand. Also, the red is sometimes associated with appetite, making people have an appetite. That's a bit of color theory. And it can also be associated with passion. So, people are excited to drink their Coca-Cola. Someone said it's fluid. I think that's wonderful. Yeah, so this is just a good exercise to get you all thinking about how what you want to convey in your brand can come across in your visuals. So thank you for participating in that. Let's move on now to talk about understanding your market. So we can jump on to the next slide here. The first thing we want to do to understand our market more deeply is to know our audience. And so I would love to know, do you have an audience persona at your organization? A persona is a fictional person that you have created with particular characteristics, activities, values, goals, motivations, fears, And it all represents the average person in your organization's target audience. So the people that you want to reach, whether it's in your donors or those you serve, volunteers, you're going to take within each of those populations, the average person there, and try to create a fictional person around that you can get to really know deeply and refer to when you're talking about your audience. Usually they come with a name. And I would love to just know if you have an audience persona, go ahead and drop the number 1 in the chat, just so I can get a sense for if anybody has an audience persona already. Wonderful. Wow, so many of you. That's amazing. I love it. If you don't have an audience persona, there is a template in a course in 54 that is easy to download. I've included a screenshot of it here on the slide, but just a wonderful thing to have and use as you talk about your audience. I often think it's a gracious way to talk about your audience too, just to really get to know them as people and not just, it makes it feel more personable in a way when you're trying to reach them. So a few ways that it can be helpful to either refine your persona if you have one or create one if you don't, is through research. And my most recommended research that you could do would be qualitative research. So this is actually getting in front of your audience and talking to them, whether it be through interviews or focus groups. It can be really helpful to have that even as an annual exercise where you handpick 10 to 15 members of your audience and ask if they would be willing to give 30 minutes of their time to answer some questions. And there are also questions included in a 54 course that you all can use as a starting point. But just getting to know your audience on a deeper level is really helpful. And you hear things come out when you're talking to them firsthand that you might not have known before. We make a lot of assumptions, and it can be really helpful to better understand what draws them to your ministry? What fears do they have? What are their challenges? What motivations do they have? What are their goals? What other organizations do they support? Why? Why are they interested in those? And it's a really great way just to better understand who you're trying to reach. Quantitative research or surveys is another great way to just better understand your audience. This is able to be done pretty easily through lots of tools that are available now. Some are free. SurveyMonkey is a big one that a lot of organizations use, but just sending out surveys. If you already send an email or mailed letters to your audience, you could include every so often a survey for them to fill out and just ask demographic information, but also some things about their preferences, and just a great way to collect more data. If neither of those methods are available to you, you can still create a persona and get to know your audience better just by pulling any existing data you do have. See if you have anything in your database that you're able to use to understand your audience, or if you even just can observe your audience. If there's somebody that you have met and you know who you feel like represents probably the average person in your audience, can you build a persona around that person and just use that as a starting point to go off of? But it's really helpful just to have some sort of basis to go off of there. So wait, who's my audience? This is a question that we've already gotten today, and I think it is so important to talk about, especially with ministries, because you all have so many audiences and stakeholders involved, and it is confusing. And so it's a great question. Oftentimes you have board members and donors and volunteers, and then some of you are also serving a population. And so who do we use as our audience? When we are talking about a target audience, if you are a ministry who is serving a population, the very general rule of thumb, without actually talking to you about your specific ministry, would be to say that that population that you are serving is going to be the target audience for which you build your brand around. So when we're talking about building a brand strategy, that is the audience you are going to use. Sometimes organizations require sub-brands, and this goes back to brand architecture, but you might have a distinct audience of donors that you need to talk to in a very different way than you talk to the people that you serve. And so they almost become this sub-brand who you create another persona for, a donor persona, and you have different ways of communicating to those people, but it's helpful to understand them at a deeper level too. So now you have two different audiences. Some of you also have volunteers, and that becomes its own third category. So it really, unfortunately, it depends on the ministry how many target audiences you should have. But I would say, as a rule of thumb, those you serve are your first and foremost target audience. And that is who we would say you should probably be building your brand around. And then consider if you have other audiences who can fit in with your current communications, or if they need to have their own separate sub-brand and communications more tailored to them. I will give a quick example. Water Mission was one of the global water crisis ministries that I had mentioned in the example earlier with messaging. And they have a large group of donors who's actually their primary audience. And so most of their brand is going to be centered around their donors, because that is how their ministry functions. But then they also partner with engineers who actually work with them to build the water solutions, the clean water solutions. And so the engineers are interested in very different information than their donors. And so that became a sub-brand for them. And they talk to their engineers differently, and they send them different communications. So hopefully that's a helpful example. But we can absolutely address this in discussion too, if there are still questions. All right, so we know our audience. We also should know others in our space. So I love this verse from 1 Corinthians 12:18-20. But in fact, God has placed the parts in the body, every one of them, just as he wanted them to be. If they were all one part, where would the body be? As it is, there are many parts, but one body. And I think it's just such a beautiful visual of how our ministries all work together for the Lord's kingdom. And I think especially there can be ministries that are very closely related and doing very similar work, and yet there are unique things about them, and they're able to serve in different ways, and they're all so needed and valuable. And so with I feel like with ministries, it's a special place where we're not competitive with each other, but we're together amplifying our work for the Lord. And so a great tool that we have then is to be able to look at ministries that are similar to yours. Maybe they're serving a similar audience or doing similar work, and to be able to analyze what is working well for them. What can I draw from that organization that's similar to us and apply to my organization? Maybe what are they doing that wouldn't work for us? And how can I tailor my organization to better serve my audience, because I'm serving someone slightly different than they are? But just having identified other organizations who are in a similar space to you can be really helpful. And I call this an organization audit. Once again, there are templates for this in the 54 course. But I think it can be a really helpful starting point for really better understanding your organization and how you can reach the population that you're serving, just based on the work that others are doing around you. So that's a really helpful tool. And then once you know your audience and you know the others in your in your space, then you should know your own organization really deeply as well, right? So what are the strengths and weaknesses of your communications? So I think it can be really, really helpful to do a communications audit. And this is essentially pulling all of the communications that you have together and taking a look at them. And I think it can be really eye-opening. Sometimes you'll notice that you say one thing in your direct mail that you're sending out, and you say a completely different thing on your website. And maybe you have some certain images that you use on your website, but you use very different images on your social media. And this is actually confusing to our audience, right? We want consistency and clarity. And so when you can look at everything you're doing together and analyze it next to each other, it can be really helpful to better understand what you're doing that maybe isn't working, or there are channels that you're using that you don't need to be. Well, that's just wasting our time and our resources. Let's invest that somewhere else. And then are we just being kind to our audience? Are we being clear to them in the way that we're communicating? Does everything we're doing make sense when we see it all together? So this is called a communications audit. Sometimes you can do a blind audit where you have a third neutral party, someone not in your organization, or often if you have a new hire, I think it's really helpful to task them with that work. Someone who's not deeply in the work of your ministry yet to do this audit, because they can have a very unbiased opinion about all the things that you're doing and if it makes sense to somebody who isn't too deep in the work. All right. So that was a lot of content that I feel like I threw at you, but I'm really excited to keep digesting this together and getting to think about how this can apply to each of your own ministries. So I'll let Nina introduce the breakout session now, where you can do that more.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Korey. And thank you for setting us up well to think about, what is the starting point for getting to healthy exposure. It's just good to get your brand strategy together. Make sure you understand your audience, other organizations, your own organization. So I feel like we're almost ready to go into the other practicalities of how exactly to do that. But before we do that, we're going to send all of you into a breakout room. We're going to just make it 10 minutes and if you can introduce yourself and share what are the greatest strengths or the challenges that you are currently experiencing in your organization with regards to your brand visibility. Right, so you'll be sent to your breakout rooms now any moment, and we hope that you have a great time. We'll see you afterwards. Welcome back, everybody. I trust that you had a great time and that there was lots to learn from each other's strengths and challenges. I'm sure that there's a lot that resonated and that got you excited for the rest of the session. So without further ado, I'm going to hand back over to Korey. Take us away. Thank you, Korey.
Great. Yes. So we have talked about now how to create a brand worth elevating, and we've talked about how to better get to know our market and where we fit in that based on our audience, what we're all about, and other organizations in our space. So now that we feel more confident about what we want to communicate, let's jump into talking more about the importance of testing and assessing our communication. So now we're ready to start putting ourselves out there to our audience. And to do that, we want to make sure that what we're doing is effective, right? We don't just want to be throwing out a bunch of different random things and not actually knowing what is working for us. And so that is the importance of testing and assessing here. We can move to the next slide, Nina. And the best way that I would recommend testing and assessing your communications is through what we call A/B testing. And some of you might already be doing this. I'm seeing a few head nods, so that's wonderful. And so essentially, if you're not familiar, A/B testing is essentially comparing two different communications and seeing which one yields better results. And so the three variables that we would often want to test would be channel, messaging, and visuals. And just a note here, even though it's called A/B testing, there's absolutely opportunity for ABC testing or running multiple A/B tests at a time. You do want to maximize your resources. So for example, you could be running an Instagram ad, a Facebook ad, and a direct mail campaign, each with two different messaging options. So you're comparing channels here, and you're also comparing the different messaging strategies in each of those. And sometimes I will also point out, as you can see on the slide here, it can make sense to adapt your visuals to your messaging. So if you are testing messaging as your variable that you want to see, does messaging A work better or messaging B? Sometimes you do need to adapt your visuals a little bit to make sense with that messaging, and that's okay. We can still assume that the messaging is probably having the greater impact. These are just two billboards that we used to test for a local pregnancy center, and we didn't want, in case people pass the two billboards right in a row, even though we're testing the messaging, the visual also changed slightly, but the type of visual is very similar. The expression on the face is similar, as you can see. So just know that there's some flexibility here. We don't want our A/B testing to get too rigid with having a control, but definitely super valuable to be able to just compare and have more assuredness of what is working and working well for you. So if we get into the next slide, I have more of a step-by-step of how to get started with this. So if you have a channel that you know is effective already, start there and test your messaging on that channel. So if you know that your audience responds really well to emails, test different messaging strategies in your emails and see if you yield different results. If you aren't sure which channel to use, that is a great thing to test. And I would suggest running 2 ads per channel. And this way you can test some messaging and visuals while you have an audience. If you're going to invest in testing different channels, I always suggest running a secondary test on top of that and testing some messaging or visuals along with it. If you are running a campaign on your existing population, your test sample should typically be about 10% of that population or up to 1,000 participants. It's just a good rule of thumb. And then you'll also just want to know the metrics that you'll be analyzing prior to running the test. And it's helpful to collect any historic data that you can on that first, so that you have some baseline metrics to compare to. And we'll talk a little bit more about which metrics to choose. But first, let's go into an example of what an A/B test can look like. So let's just do a little trial of this. Let's say that you send your donors thank you letters quarterly, and you would like to see if different messaging increases the amount of giving per donor. We'll say that you have 2,000 donors in your database. So the metric here is going to be dollars given per donor. Your variable that you're testing is the messaging, and your test sample would be 10% of those 2,000 donors, so 200 donors. So we would send 1,800 of your donors the original messaging that you've typically been using for those thank you letters. And then we'd send 200 donors new messaging that we're trying in their letter. And we would measure the average dollars given per donor in group A and group B, and then see which is higher. And then we know moving forward which strategy to use. That's just a very basic example. On the next slide, we have one more. In this situation, let's say that you've not advertised to your audience before, but would like to see if it makes a difference. In this case, you are hoping to increase the amount of volunteers that you have at your annual event. And you are deciding to see if an Instagram ad or mailed flyers are going to be more effective. So the metric here is going to be the number of volunteers that sign up. Your variable is your channel. And your test sample here, you get to choose. So let's just say you do 100,000 impressions via Instagram and you buy 100,000 impressions via mailed flyers. That's a lot of impressions, but that's just an example. So Instagram here is test A and the flyers are test B. And then when the volunteers register, maybe they sign up on a landing page online and they get to mark how they found out about the event. And you'll see, did more people check an Instagram ad or did they check flyers? And then you'll know which channel is probably more effective for this type of advertising going forward. So let's talk more about which metrics matter. I think this is especially challenging sometimes in the digital space, and we'll move into that shortly, of just talking about all things digital, but it can feel a bit overwhelming when there's so many different metrics out there. Which ones should I be making decisions based on, right? So it really depends on your goals. If your goal is to increase the people who invest in your organization, then the number of unique donors could be a great metric for you. If it's to increase the amount of donations, the amount of money that you actually receive from your donors, then dollars given per donor could be a great metric. If your goal is to increase the number of people that just know about your ministry, then you can start looking at followers, views, and impressions, which can apply to both the digital and non-digital space. And then if your goal is to increase the number of people actually interacting with your ministry, you'll want to look at things more like engagements, which could be like likes, shares, comments. If you're looking at the digital space, or attending events, engagements could be like they engage in any way. They donate, they sign up for a newsletter. There's a lot of ways to measure engagement, but and then clicks too. If you're looking at the digital space, can be a good way of just measuring how engaged people are with your ministry. And so it'll really depend on your goals. The most important thing is going to be choosing a metric based on your goal and then sticking with that, because the best data is historic data. So the more data you can gather over time, the better that will serve your organization, rather than jumping from like, this year we measured, this metric, and next year we're going to measure this. I think it can be really helpful to continue on with a metric if it makes sense with your goals, or you can add metrics that you're tracking, but having historical data to make decisions upon will be really, really helpful to serve you well. And then just a quick note in there, digital ads can be a bit confusing to navigate, and there are so many metrics that are provided typically when you choose to do a digital ad of some sort. But just to keep it simple, I would generally recommend focusing on impressions and click-through rate, which are going to be two metrics almost always provided if you're doing a digital ad. So just a little tip in there. Moving on. Let's move into some more tactical tips for choosing the right channels. So now we know how to measure if we're being effective. We have a sense for who our audience is. We know what our brand is all about. So now I feel like we're ready to actually start putting ourselves out there and communicating. So which channels should we be using to do that? Let's jump in. There are a few different categories that you can look at when you're talking about communications channels. One big category is organic versus paid communication. The term organic in marketing means free. So it's any communication that you're not paying for. And this can either be owned media or earned media. And it's just helpful to identify both of those so that you can see where each plays into your marketing strategy. We would obviously want to utilize organic media and communication as much as we can, because it's the best bang for our buck, right? It's how we're going to get the most out of our marketing budget. And so owned media is reaching your network on an organic channel. So that would be if I posted on my personal Instagram account to my followers. That is owned media. Earned media is going to be others promoting your organization to their networks without being compensated to do so. So if Nina then shared my Instagram post, that is some earned media for me, because now I'm not only reaching my network, I'm reaching her network as well. And so thinking about both of those strategies in your marketing strategy can be really helpful. Where are there opportunities to leverage our owned media? How can we better leverage communicating to our network that we already have? And then how can we amplify that by leveraging earned media? How can we encourage others to be sharing what we're doing? What are opportunities for that? And then there's also paid communication, which can be super helpful if you want to amplify and boost your presence even further. And so obviously paid media is going to be spending money to advertise your organization. And we'll talk about more ways you could do that. So besides for organic and paid media, there's also the categories of non-digital and digital channels. So non-digital channels are any forms of communication that do not use the internet. This is mailed letters, printed flyers, newspaper ads, billboards. Word of mouth is a big non-digital channel that I think a lot of us find really helpful. And just a quick note here, we often think that for younger audiences, we should only rely on digital channels, but this is not always true. I think there is a place for using at least some non-digital channels for every organization, and being strategic about leveraging those. And then the other category that we'll talk about is the digital channels. And so these are forms of communication that do use the internet. This is websites, emails, Google searches, which includes SEO or search engine optimization, social media, Spotify or radio, television, all of this falls in the digital realm. And I feel like the digital realm is often where we start to get a little more confused and overwhelmed, because it is confusing and it's overwhelming, and there's so much out there. And it can be a bit challenging to know how to navigate it all. And so we'll spend just a little bit more time today here in the digital world and talking about what would make sense for your ministry to use here. Go on to the next slide. To help us choose which channels to use, I think it can be really helpful to understand which audiences are on which channels. So if you know the average age of, typical age of your audience, that is one helpful place to start to know where you might find them on which platforms. So Facebook, you can find pretty much anybody on Facebook nowadays. We have everyone from teenagers to grandmothers. And so the most common age group there is going to be 30 to 49-year-olds. But just know most of you could probably find some of your audience on Facebook. YouTube is similar. Most people use YouTube and are watching videos there. But again, the biggest age range there is going to lower a little bit to 18 and extend to 49-year-olds as well. Instagram. This you can think of as your Gen Z and millennials, and then the next generation is going to come into that as well. But it's basically 18 to 49-year-olds. You will probably effectively communicate to them on Instagram. TikTok is 18 to 29-year-olds, definitely serves a younger audience. Snapchat is the same. Pinterest is going to be 18 to 49-year-olds as its largest audience. LinkedIn, you'll find its largest audience at 30 to 49-year-olds. You'll think about usually your mid-career professionals using that. X, which is still hard for me to say. I still want to call it Twitter, but that is your 18 to 29-year-olds, but really closely followed by 30 to 49-year-olds as well. So that audience is actually starting to get older and older with time. And then Google is for everybody as well. So you can find anybody using Google. And then beyond just knowing the typical age ranges, it's helpful to know what each channel is typically used for. This will both help when you're looking to put content on these channels, and then also knowing how your audience is probably using these channels. So just a really quick brief overview. Facebook is great for creating company pages. You can also create groups and events, and you can share some informative content or recaps there. It's a place where you can share photos, videos, and also it's appropriate for some longer posts. YouTube is typically used for longer videos. It can be used for behind the scenes videos or tutorials or informational videos. Instagram is great for real-time stories and recaps. It's very visually interesting. It's engaging. It's creative. You see a lot of organizations express themselves more there. TikTok, that is great for videos that feature a song or dancing or a person talking and relaying insights, opinions. It's meant to make an impression on the viewer. Snapchat is there for fun or playful photos and videos with almost no text. Pinterest, it's a visually appealing and shareable platform. It has lots of inspiration and ideas. LinkedIn is typically for professional content. You're going to see industry insights and articles there, both posts that are long and posts that are short. And oftentimes they include graphics, photos, short videos. And then X is going to be short to the point text, usually offering an insight or opinion, very news-based. And then Google is going to be for anyone looking for information. So that's just a quick rundown. And you might already see, oh, like I think our organization could use this platform for this based off of that. So hopefully that helps. And we'll go into more specific recommendations on what your specific ministry should be doing next. So go ahead forward. When it comes to organic, communications here without talking to any of you or really knowing your ministry. So just keep in mind that this is general, but I would say for most organizations, here are the top 6 things that I would recommend you do for organic media. So everybody should have a website, and you should focus on having good organic SEO on your website. There are a lot of tools out there to help with search engine optimization, and oftentimes it's a lot easier than you think it is, of just the way that you build your website and putting in, making it very easy to read for users. So I won't go too in depth there, but definitely something to consider, because if you have a website, you want people to be able to find it. Direct mail and an email campaign to those in your database is another great form of organic communication. I would say almost every ministry should be doing both of those in some capacity. And then a Facebook page is often really helpful, even if you feel like your audience isn't super active there. One, it helps with SEO that we talked about earlier, and 2, it is just helpful for credibility that you have a Facebook page, and it's just a good opportunity to show that you're active, you're alive, you're doing things, your ministry is it's taking part in activities. So if you can keep that somewhat updated, I think a Facebook page is very helpful. Possibly your ministry would benefit from a group page or events as well, but that will really depend on individual circumstances. A LinkedIn page is also helpful just for credibility. I would say most of you don't need to spend a whole lot of time even posting there, but just have a LinkedIn page set up and have your employees who have a LinkedIn say that they work for your organization, so that when people search for your ministry, they can see, oh, there are 10 people that work there. You know, it just makes it feel, again, active and alive and credible. The next one that I would recommend would be a video. If you have the capability of creating a video to talk about your organization, and if you could put that video on YouTube and then also embed it in your website, maybe share it on your social media, it's just a really powerful tool to help your audience feel connected to you and also to just expand your reach. And then the last thing I would say, it really depends on who your audience is, but a lot of organizations benefit from having an Instagram account as well and sharing there, since that audience has continuously expanded. And then we'll talk about the paid things that you can be doing. So I would say at least these 3 things if you're going to invest in some more advertising for your organization. A really helpful place to invest can be in Google Ads, which is paid SEO. So there are things that you can do to boost your organic SEO to help people find your website, but it's very competitive, and Google has you pay for visibility now. And so you will be seen more if you pay to be seen on Google. So it can be a helpful strategy, again, just depending on your resources and how you want to invest. But if you feel like people might be searching for services that you offer or opportunities that could be found on your website, helping them find you can be really helpful via Google Ads. There are a lot of agencies that will do this for you if that is in your budget, or it's actually free to get somebody on your team certified to do this, and there are free courses that Google offers. So investing in that can be really helpful. The next strategy I would say to invest in would be a paid mail or email campaign. You can purchase addresses to send things to, and that can be a really helpful way to just expand your reach. And there are ways to target who those people are, and you can know, once you know who your audience is and who generally would benefit from engaging with your organization, you can try to find those people and get in front of them this way. And then the last thing I would say to consider would be a Facebook or Instagram ad campaign. And again, this will depend on your audience, but these are great channels to play around with, especially if you're testing some messaging or you just want to try your hand at some digital advertising. They are fairly easy to use, and there's a large range of spend that you can do. You really get to control how much you want to invest in those channels, and you'll start to see some results. And so it's fun to look at those, and yeah, it's a great way to do some A/B testing that we talked about earlier. So those are my 3 biggest recommendations for paid campaigns that your ministry could be doing. But again, all of this is fairly general, and your specific ministry might require some different strategies, but hopefully what we've talked about today will help you better filter what applies to your organization. All right, Nina, do we have time for one more quick tips slide on social media, or is that something that should wait for another time?
I think let's jump a little bit into questions and discussion. I'm sure the leaders are on the ends of their seats to engage with you. And I'm going to see if we have a minute left, because I would love to share those bonus tips after the Q&A. And then we see, otherwise I'll distribute it on the emailer that we send out afterwards. But let's hear from the floor if we have any questions. Yeah, thank you so much for that, Korey. And to anyone who wants to ask a question, you can just unmute and share, or I'll also have a look at the chat to pull some questions from there if you have any. I'll just give it a minute.
Korey, I've got a question, if I can jump in.
Yeah,
I'd love to just hear some case studies from you, because we know, you've had a lot of experience in this. And then specifically within ministries and organizations where branding and marketing can sometimes there can be a bit of pushback, that it's something that we associate with the corporate world, or, really people wanting to push numbers. Have you had a case study where initially your client is hesitant and has that sort of pushback, and then they've actually seen the effect of, really being strategic in messaging, and just any examples or something that you've seen work?
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a good question, because I think even the words branding and marketing can feel a little almost icky sometimes for ministries, because we don't want to manipulate anyone, and we're so used to getting all of these marketing messages around us constantly, and we're constantly being told we need the latest and greatest, and we need to buy this and buy that, and so it can feel a little difficult sometimes to navigate that space. But I think something really helpful to remember as ministries is that what we're offering, what we have, is something that will actually benefit our audience, right? And it's something that they want to be engaged in. They just don't know about it. And so we're serving them well by better understanding them and reaching those people. And these are the messages that we want them to be bombarded with, right? We want them to see the good work that the Lord is doing through each of your ministries, and to be able to experience the joy of being involved in that. And so, yes, I think, but I have worked with ministries where there's some resistance, especially to spend valuable resources in marketing. And so, for example, I mentioned earlier a local pregnancy center that I've worked with, and their board was actually very hesitant to invest in marketing, because they're like, shouldn't we be putting that money into the clinic and making, this feel, shouldn't we be giving more to these women that are coming in here, because they don't have a lot of resources, and we could be using that money to gift them, more things and care for them better. And yes, that definitely needs to be analyzed. But also, if you have no woman walking in the door, then you don't have anyone to give that to anyways. And so what we came to was just trying to really encourage them to pray over how much they wanted to spend in marketing and what felt right. And we said, let's just start with a little and see what we can do, and just be really wise with how we spend that. And so we started just with a little, and we would do every couple of months, I think it was 3-month windows, where we would do some A/B testing. And so we said, okay, we're only going to invest in these 2 channels of marketing. This month, we're going to be putting it into billboards and Instagram ads, right? And so let's just see which one performs better. Does it get us more people in the door who we could serve? And then we found that it did. And so as we saw the effectiveness, then we were more willing to increase that spend, because we're seeing, this is actually making an impact, and we are able to help these people now that we have found. So hopefully that answers your question. But
it does. It's also nice just to get that you don't have to go all in initially if you're a little uncertain. To just do a test of the A/B testing is such a good starting point, I think. So yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
thanks for asking.
Thank you for that question, Nicole. And thanks. That is really, really helpful to think about. Thanks, Korey. I see we've got Matthew's hand up as well. Matthew, won't you come off mute and ask your question?
Afternoon, everyone from Birmingham in England. I've got a question for you. I'm on a 2-year secondment on a project where we've realised that we do need to do a brand reevaluation, but at the same time, I'm under significant pressure to start delivering on areas that I need to be accountable for. And it's this tension that I'm in of, we need to do a brand evaluation. And if the outcome of that evaluation is that we do need to rebrand, which I think there'll be some element to that, how important is it to do the rebranding exercise before I start to launch tools and I start to launch systems and ways of working? The rejuvenation that's happening, I'm involved with emergency services chaplaincy in the UK.
That's a really good question. Yes, a rebrand is time consuming, and it's really valuable to do that and to invest the time to do it right. But you don't want to be putting your ministry on hold while you're trying to navigate that process. So it's a good question. And I don't know if I have a great answer other than if you're able to identify any sub-brands that you can roll out one at a time, that can sometimes ease that tension a little bit. But I think it's okay to still be putting some things out there while you're doing your rebrand, because information is better than nothing, right? Getting some sort of information out there is better than nothing. But just be strategic in the way that you're getting it out there so that, like, for example, if you're going to create a website, do you already know if your name will stay the same, right? You don't want to be purchasing a domain name that you'll then have to repurchase and retell people what website. So like those sorts of things, if you can think about that first, and you could roll out like the new name of your organization while you're still figuring out the visuals and messaging that will go with it, but at least you have the name that you can buy a domain for. I think just think about it systematically like that and see what you can roll out one at a time, but don't pause everything. I would say do what you can do to still get some information out, but just be strategic about what you're choosing to share. And then when you do your rebrand, make it a big thing to everybody that you've already talked to about your organization, introduce them to the rebrand and use that as an excuse to really like get some materials in front of them as an exciting, like, hey, we're really like, this shows growth in our organization, you know, and get them excited with you. But
thank you very much. Thank you.
No problem.
Love the enthusiasm, Korey. Thank you. I posted in the chat that there is time for one more question, although that person will have to jump. So I don't see any more questions coming up or hands that's being raised. There we go. Uniqua, thank you so much. Uniqua is asking, in terms of our audience personas, is it okay for our primary and secondary personas to alternate? Can we use the same platforms to target donors, volunteers, and participants? Great question. Thank you, Uniqua.
Yeah, that's a great question. Absolutely. You will have, sometimes your primary audience will become your secondary audience when you're talking to a different population. So when you have a primary audience of a population you serve and then another one of donors, sometimes you need to just focus on your donors and communicate to them. And sometimes you need to focus on those you serve and communicate to them. So it's okay to alternate who you're talking to, as long as you're making sure that you're talking to the right people. You can use the same platforms. Some like the same website can reach everybody, and sometimes you just have different tabs for different people, right? It really is so organization specific. And so if you have more specific questions, I'm happy to answer that maybe after this, because I know it can be a challenge. But I would say a lot of organizations only need one Instagram account, one website, one Facebook page, unless you feel like you would need to say very different things to your donors than your volunteers or the people you serve. So hopefully that helps.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Korey. That is certainly helpful. And I want to say to you, Nikwa, that in a week's time, we've got another round of this, and Korey will be present. And so hang around and I'll give you the QR code to register for that session, because it feels like this is really a conversation that we can unpack a lot more. But before we go there, we would love to get your feedback, to learn from you on how we can make this better and whether you found this helpful. So a poll will be popping up. If you can please let us know how you've experienced this. Just make sure that you answer all 4 questions. So the first one you'll see on the screen, but you'll just have to scroll a little bit to get to the rest. And this is the exciting takeaway that I am very excited about, because I believe it's going to be so valuable for you guys. We have got a brand workshop coming up in a week's time, and Korey has been so amazing to say to be keen to join that. So what's going to happen is we'll send a few questions to you up front to think about and just have to prepare. And then we'll do a brand review. So we'll share what you're doing with your brand currently and with your challenges. And Korey is gonna help you get a little bit unstuck. And some of this content that she shared today is so practical, and I know it can feel a bit overwhelming. But if we get together in a week's time and you can just ask some of the questions where you feel like you just need that little bit of input to move forward, we're there for you. And in a week's time, we're getting together again. This one starts at 4 o'clock South African time. So just make sure you've got the right time there. And I really hope to see you all there. And then just the last one, an encouragement and reminder that you can also go on our website. This session is going to be available on our site. There's related courses with a lot of the stuff that Korey shared today. And also, if you want to register for our upcoming session in November with Jim Word, we are going to talk about dynamic strategy. Then lastly, you've seen our WhatsApp groups. It's a great place for us to send you reminders and to send some other information that we found that could be helpful, or for you to also just ask questions if there's anything if you want some tips or tools or platforms or survey tools that someone's found helpful. It's a great place for us to share and to learn together. So you can scan this QR code if you want to join, and we'll also circulate this link in the mailer that goes out tomorrow. So thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Korey. It's been great to have you, and your experience is just exceptional. It's great to have you here and to learn so much from you. I really appreciate that you've taken the time to be here with us. And I'm so grateful to all of the leaders who's taken out the time also to be here with us and to learn together. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you.